Bob Pollock from the Penn State Extension is on the line with us once more. You can give Bob a call at 479-1160 if you would like to talk to him about your lawns and gardens and trees and plants and shrubs and flowers and everything else. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Todd.
Conversation brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. So this is a really, really interesting time of the year as we make this transition into full-time spring. Spring season begins tomorrow at 5:37 a.m. And people are now getting outdoors. They're taking a look at the winter damage to their lawns and their shrubs and things of that nature, and they're starting to clean the place up. So this is the time. This is the time when people are getting outdoors. What are some of the things that we should be looking at? One thing somebody asked me was, ask Bob if I can do a preemptive strike on my dandelions.
Hey, well, not really.
Okay.
Now, I suppose by preemptive, a couple strategies to do that, because we have herbicides that would, for weeds, that are pre-emergent materials.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was one labeled for the seeds, germinating seeds of dandelions, put down as a pre-emergent material,
mm-hmm.
meaning as those seeds germinate, that particular material will kill them as those seeds germinate and start to grow. For the most part, and that can work in beds and things like that. In the yard, typically, we're waiting till those plants are there. And once those weeds start to grow, and there are weeds amazingly growing now, chickweed is a great example. There's a group of mostly annual weeds that germinate during the winter, actually, and they're called winter annuals. Wonder who thought of that. But that's what they are. So they germinate very early in the spring. Soil temperatures can still be cold, but they will germinate, and they're growing now. And chickweed is just one example of that you can start looking around and see these little dainty weeds that have emerged and growing, and there they are.
Yeah.
But they'll complete their life cycle early. They'll flower, produce seed, and then they'll die again. And then those seed will lay there until it's time to germinate again. But and oftentimes they're not a huge issue, but often in gardens where that soil was tilled up, maybe in the fall, and left a nice seed bed there all winter, there may be nothing else growing in that garden soil, but it's green.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's what's there at this point.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, so in terms of actual preemptive strikes, pre-emerge is actually the better word for it. But there might be some things, but it really comes down with anything, doesn't it, to reading that label?
Yes, it does. And one of the most common weeds in the yard, for example, is crabgrass, that we would use a preventative material. Oftentimes it's just a granular material we put on. Oftentimes the fertilizers, that first fertilizer that we put on in the spring, will have a crabgrass preventer in it. Mm-hmm. So you'll have granules of fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and in most cases for the lawn, it's just nitrogen in there. There isn't any phosphorus or potassium in those turf fertilizers, but it'll also have that pre-emergent crabgrass preventer in there, and you apply that when you put the fertilizer down, and then it's there for when those crabgrass seeds are starting to germinate, because crabgrass is an annual grass, regerminates every year from seed. If there's any there now, the plants would just be dead brown plants
mm-hmm.
that would have died off when we had freezes back last fall.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now's a good time to get out and look at your yard. If there are gaps, if there are spots, you can get out there and seed that now.
Okay.
You can work those spots up, and then seed it. Lightly cover that seed, and you can use straw mulch, or you can use peat moss or mushroom compost, or you could use just compost that you made in your own backyard from all the leaves that you composted from last fall.
Mm-hmm.
If you dig down to the bottom of the pile, you may have some stuff that's pretty well decayed from this past season or a season before, and you can just lightly scatter that over the top. That covers the seed up. You don't really want to leave it exposed because it's not going to germinate right away. We're early enough yet. Soils are still cool enough that those grass seeds probably won't germinate yet, but you'll have that job done. And then as it does get warmer, then those seeds get moisture, they'll be able to germinate and grow, and you'll have those patches fixed.
Yeah. Hey, we're in the spring of the year. We see a lot of stink bugs right now, and the insect world is awakening once again. I'm looking at Penn State Extension's spotted lanternfly map, and the number of counties that are existing in quarantine now that's really expanding southeast and coming westward pretty rapidly. And now we see that Westmoreland and Cambria counties are listed as being counties that have infested areas.
Yes.
Added to the quarantine in 2021. Yeah, just added now. And they're bordering Indiana County. In fact, the one area that I see that is really, really hot in Westmoreland County is right on the southern border of Indiana County. They're coming, aren't they?
Yes, they keep inching closer. And that's right. Those were just added. It kind of goes through that just south of our border there. We do have a body of water that goes along our southern border of Indiana County. There's also railroad tracks that go through there, interestingly enough, and which makes you think that, we do have means of transportation and movement. We also have some major highways going across the southern part of the county as well. So we don't know for sure that that's how those have moved, and the reason for those counties getting added for sure, but nonetheless, their movement is the primary way, and we help that out, unfortunately, a lot to get this particular insect moved around. It's a great hitchhiker, and so anybody, and it's very common, I think, for people from this area to travel and get on those major highways, whether they be the 22 or the Turnpike, and travel to other parts of the state. And, how do we get products here and there? And so there's an awful lot of travel that takes place going into those infested areas to our east and then coming back through. And at the right time of the year, then either the adults can hitch a ride, or the nymphal stages of the spotted lanternfly, which they don't fly, but they can crawl, land on your vehicle, and then that becomes the method for movement. And then the other way is the adults laying egg masses, and they will lay them on just about anything. It can be a smooth surface, a rough surface. It can be steel, wood, tires, vehicles. They're not very indiscriminate as to where they lay their eggs. It doesn't just have to be on a tree of heaven, which is that invasive Ailanthus species that we have a lot of around here.
Yeah.
Once you learn how to identify it. So that's one of the things that it gets on. And, of course, walnut is another one. Maples are another one. And they'll get on and grapevines are another very attractive plant for those adults to come, as well as the young, and feed on, because they're sap suckers. Mm-hmm. So they've got this needle-like mouth parts that they can pierce through into the bark and into the wood to get sap out of the plant. and that's what they feed on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they physically damage the plant by piercing and feeding, and then if there's enough of them, removing sap. Not as big of an issue on a big tree, but when you think about a grapevine and how small the branches are typically, and if we're managing those grapevines and we have them, in our backyard, or we have a plantation of them or a vineyard of them, we're managing those, we're pruning those, we're trying to keep those plants smaller diameter vines, and so you get 1,000 or more spotted lanternfly on those plants and feeding. They'll kill them.
Yeah,
that's what happens.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be watching that very, very closely here through the coming months. Just one note before we say goodnight. Goodbye, Bob. Good night, Bob. Just got a text from Lynette that Yarnick's Farm Market opens today. How about that? The spring season starts tomorrow, and Yarnick's is getting the jump. They're open today 9 to 5. That's a good thing, isn't it?
That's right. Yep. Get it first day of spring.
You betcha. You betcha. All right, Bob, have a great day today. Thank you. Thank you.